Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we're talking about mindfulness. So what it actually is, why it's important, how we can go about applying it very simply in the middle of our busy lives, and then what it looks like to go a little bit more in depth and develop an actual practice if we wanted to devote a little bit more time to it. So for starters, mindfulness is literally simply being present in the moment. So it's something all of us have already experienced and do probably fairly often. Anytime we get really dialed into our work and we're not focused on anything else, we're just doing one thing, or we're really present to the person sitting across from us, anytime we're just really there with our family or our friends and we're just living in the moment, there it is. You're being mindful, you're being present. Or even if we're by ourselves going for a walk and we're just appreciating the scenery, or we're really experiencing what's going on around us, all of this is mindfulness. So it's something that we already do. It doesn't need to be a mysterious kind of mystical thing. The reason it's a big deal is that most of us don't actually spend that much time in the present moment. And it's actually the only place where we're really truly happy and dialed in and really experiencing life to the fullest. So we want to find ways to develop a habit of being more mindful and more present. And this is important because if we spend our time thinking about the future, which I tend to do, we can be planning, which is not a bad thing, or daydreaming, which is also okay, but it also leads to a lot of anxiety and stress. We tend to worry about the future. And then if we dwell on the past, there is, again, some positive elements to reminiscing or remembering things that have happened to us, but it can lead to dwelling on a lot of regret or resentment, thinking about things other people have done to us that we're angry about, or things that we wish we had done differently. All of that clears away, completely clears away when we stay in the present moment. So it's really something worth practicing. Okay, so how do we go about doing it? The simplest method, and something we can all apply, like right away today, is to take a couple moments throughout your day just to be really aware of what's going on around you. The way we want to do this is probably to tap into our five senses first and say, okay, what am I hearing right now? What am I seeing? What's my tactile experience? What am I feeling? Right? So just take a moment to be literally physically present and aware of what you're experiencing. You can go a little further with it and be aware of what are you feeling emotionally and internally. How are you feeling right now? Are you feeling maybe really anxious about something or excited? Maybe you're calm. Try to be aware of what your experience is. The second step, which can be a little bit harder, is not to judge or criticize what we are feeling. Many of us have strong opinions about our own feelings. And if we're feeling something negative, like we're angry or anxious, we'll jump on ourselves and be really self-critical. And that is a habit we want to try and retrain. So this is the hard part, is being aware of your experience and then not being really critical of it. We also don't want to fall into a lot of complaining. So you could theoretically, let's say you did this in the middle of your workday. So like maybe you're at a desk in an office. And as soon as you start to be aware of your senses, you realize that your chair is really uncomfortable. We don't want to sit for 2 minutes complaining to ourselves about our chair. That won't really bring a lot of light and joy into our lives. The goal is to have an attitude of kindness. We want to be charitable towards ourselves and our circumstance. We're trying to foster a little bit more gratitude as well. So we don't want it to be a time for complaining or just dwelling on things that we're irritated about in our circumstance or in ourselves. It has to be a little bit proactive. So a good example of how we might apply this in the middle of our very busy lives is, let's say that you're stuck in traffic and you're late for a meeting. Bummer, right? Been there. Some of us have been there more often than others because we have a bad habit of leaving like a minute late. Yeah, we're working on it. Anyway, so let's say you're stuck in traffic and you're late, and so you're probably having a lot of very negative feelings. You're probably irritated, maybe you feel guilty, maybe you're just worrying about what it's going to be like when you walk in late to the meeting. If you've built up a habit of practicing a little bit of mindfulness, then you might be able to take this stressful circumstance and remove yourself from it for a minute and say, okay, hang on, what am I experiencing right now? And again, you can start with your senses and say, oh, well, I hear a lot of traffic sounds and I see a lot of cars, right? But literally, what are you experiencing? And then say, well, what am I feeling? Oh, I feel really stressed, irritated. Maybe I'm frustrated with myself. And say, okay, from that taking a moment to kind of step back, hopefully this will open you up to have a little bit more clarity and a little bit more choice. Because the fact of the matter is, at this point, you will be late to your meeting no matter what. So what you feel isn't going to change the circumstance. Our frustration and our irritation is almost like wishing that by our emotions we could change the outcome. But that is not going to happen. All we can do at this point is decide how to respond the best way. And guaranteed, being led by strong negative emotions will never lead you to the best choice. So I might be able to step back and deliberately decide to go calmly into the building and not run in like a maniac. Or I might decide that actually I can call a coworker really quick or call my boss and say, hey, I am really sorry, but I'm going to be 5 minutes late. And now at least they know, and I know they won't like hold the meeting for me, which would make it worse. So there might be something I can do. I might be able to actually step back and make a free choice outside of purely my emotions. So this is an example, right, of how we can apply it to a fairly standard, mundane experience, the kind of thing that we all have, these frustrations that come to us throughout our lives regularly every day. And our lives are made up of these regular everydays. So the more we can bring a sense of like peace and centeredness, some clarity, some joy to these average daily moments, the more joy we have in our lives overall. So it's absolutely a worthwhile endeavor. So we want to be aware, we want to take a little bit of mercy on ourselves. And from that, if we can move into that headspace, that's where this like myriad list of reasons to live in the present comes from. It immediately helps us develop self-awareness. Literally, that's what we are doing. We're being more aware of our experience and ourselves. And from developing self-awareness as a habit, right? If we're training these pathways in the brain, so we're developing this trend of being more self-aware, this helps us regulate our emotions, develop and nurture our relationships with other people. It helps us understand our place in society. We have a better sense of our goals, where we're going with our life. Because the more we stop and take stock of what's actually going on around us and within us, the more choices we have. So it takes us out of a purely emotional experience and gives us the chance to respond intentionally, to decide how we want to act in the midst of our feelings and our experiences. It creates more room for creativity. If you bring a little bit of stillness into your life, it gives your mind more space to play and expand. It reduces stress, it reduces anxiety, it helps with anger and regulating our emotions because, again, it's taking us out of this anxious thinking ahead or this angry thinking of the past. It helps us understand what's going on internally so we're a little bit less stressed out by our own feelings. Anything we don't understand or we can't identify tends to be scary. For many of us, if we have anxiety and we don't understand why, now it has compounded itself. So if you're taking a moment to say, oh, I'm anxious, I wonder why that is, that will help. This helps us manage our emotions, which is part of why it reduces stress and anxiety. So it's a really important, very simple habit. And again, many of us do it naturally. Anytime we're in the present moment, we are not being anxious. We're not being stressed. We're not freaking out about something that happened before or something that's coming down the pipeline. We're just in reality. So we already know how to do this. We're just trying to train it to happen more often because so many of us spend most of our time mentally somewhere else. And then we're also missing what's happening to us in the moment. So we want to be present here and now because that's where life is. That's where our life is. And we all only have so many days on this earth. And we want to be here for as much of it as we can. So with that said, let's say we want to really commit to this and like dig a little bit deeper. That's how we get to what most people mean when they talk about a mindfulness practice, which is more meditative. So it can take a religious context. It often does. It doesn't have to. For myself, absolutely, I connect it to prayer. It's my favorite form of prayer because it becomes a very still, listening-based kind of prayer instead of talking prayer, which is also good, but it doesn't do as much for me. But again, it doesn't have to be. So what's required, what we need in order to actually achieve a kind of meditative mindfulness practice is you need to find something to focus on. So again, this idea of going back to the five senses, we want to pick, usually people pick something to listen to, but you can also focus on your breath. Or if you were going to take it to prayer, you could find maybe a line of scripture or something that you want to think about. Actually, that can work too. So you want to find something to focus on. Very simply, you give yourself a space of time. Maybe 10 minutes is usually a good starting point if you haven't done this before. With time, again, we're training pathways. You're going to essentially build endurance. You'll be able to do it for longer. I usually do 20 minutes now. Some people will do it for an hour or many hours, but most of us will want to give it maybe 10 minutes, and you try to stay focused. And then the hard part is that your mind will wander. It will absolutely wander to something else. You'll start thinking about what you're going to eat for lunch or what you need to say in the meeting that's coming up. And the key is to bring yourself back without being critical. It's really important that we don't jump to being really irritated with ourselves, because that's kind of the root of a lot of the problems we have, is that not only do we have a hard time as people being like the person we want to be, when we fail, we're really hard on ourselves. So don't worry. It's part of the practice, is bringing your mind back very gently. Literally, that's part of it. So don't be a bit surprised if your mind has wandered off. With time, you will naturally start to stay there a little bit longer. But even then, it's kind of like anything else. You'll still have off days. So even if you've gotten kind of used to this and you know how it works, you will have days where your mind will not really center. And it's okay. And you have to be easygoing and give yourself a break. That is pretty much it. This kind of meditative practice has been found to have a whole myriad of other benefits because you're doing so much to calm your body for a more extended period of time. It's been found to reduce actual physical pain, sometimes to reduce like high blood pressure or other ailments that come from levels of high stress. You do this many, many days and you're reducing your stress levels overall. So there are so many health benefits that come with that too. So obviously I recommend going for this like longer, more meditative practice if you are willing to put in the time, because it will make a difference. It's made such a difference in my life. I hope this has helped make it feel like a less mysterious thing that only some people can achieve. Everyone is mindful sometimes. We just want to build a habit of being present a little bit more often. Don't be discouraged if it's hard. When I first started, I gave myself 10 minutes because I could probably stay centered for like 30 seconds at a time. So don't worry. It's kind of difficult, but the difficulty is also what's going to make it more worthwhile. Easy things don't usually have a high payoff, but it will help you overall, hopefully in many, many ways. If you have any thoughts or questions, please drop them in the comments below. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.